What exposure did you have to mariachi, and what is your point of view of the art form?
Well, it was something that, it was a music that was played in my house. Often, like a lot of people that are like first generation, it's like your mom plays it really loud on a Saturday morning to get you up out of bed and to call you downstairs to help clean. And it's also like the backdrop of long car rides with like my mother and my abuela, and there's a dissonance in, I feel like, my relationship to mariachi, because it's both home and it's also foreign at the same time. You know, it's familiar and it's not yours, all in one. And it creates this dissonance that when you do get a chance to finally have an opportunity to really connect with it, it's really like enchanting, because it's finally given to you, even though in a way it was always there, you know. So it is a strange relationship, and I love that the playwright really writes about it with that kind of relationship in mind, knowing that like a lot of American-born, like Mexican Americans, for instance, we know it, but it's not ours, right? And that's her relationship with the music when the play starts, right? She knows it, but it's not hers yet. And there's a moment in the play where all the girls are really intimidated, because they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do mariachi. And then they're like, oh my God, there's a lot to it. And all the girls are like really intimidated, and like the mentor kind of like rallies them. And so it's this really amazing opportunity to just like have a chance to be given that like inheritance.
Describe how you approach the role and what you understand of it in regards both as mariachi and as an actress.
Well, to this character, the music means everything. You know, she, as a young girl, she worshipped her Tia Carmen, who was a mariachi in Mexico at a time when women were playing. And she was a bold woman, she was a brave woman. She went into little towns and just took the bull by the horns as far as her life. And Amalia doesn't have regret about not being a mariachi herself. She is a woman living in her time and in her role. But the music is what brings depth and joy to her life. She's married to a mariachi. She sings all the time. That's what when she was well, the house was filled with music. And to me, working on this character has been about really understanding how deep music is in our souls, and how our earliest hearings are things that will always trigger us to joy, to activity, to life. And it really is exciting, because my character is very, very ill, and the way I think of it, I sometimes think of it as a record skip, that she goes back in time in her memory, and she always goes back to the parts of her life that made her the happiest, and those were the parts of her life that were filled with mariachi music. To be an artist is a little bit selfish. That's very true. It is because there is a need that you have to express yourself, and sometimes that is a little bit at odds with what your family feels they need, what you feel your family needs, but sometimes you have to give your art room to grow. I mean, it's funny you asked that question, because I left my husband and 12-year-old home for 10 weeks so that I could do this play, because it's so rare to have an opportunity to do a character that is so rich, so well written, so fully formed, so beautiful, that I said, okay, I'm gonna do this. It's a sacrifice for my family, but I have to do it. And my husband is also an actor and a composer, and he understands, but of course, you know, it's something that really drives you, and especially at my age, it really has to be something you have to do, because so many other things are so much easier. But I will always go back to this stage, just because it's an important place for me, and as a teacher, it's an important place to bring other Latinx young people to come and experience, to have the opportunities. I mean, to be honest, it's becoming more, but it's been relatively rare to have such wonderful, well-written female characters in the Latinx canon. I mean, this play, these characters are beautifully well written. It's a majority female cast. Every single one of them has an interesting motivation, an interesting through line. Nobody talks about, the man. There's no romance in this piece. It's really about getting what they want, and what they want is the music. And it's kind of exciting that people understand that women also feel that way, that what we want is the art as well. That also can fulfill you to the deepest ends of your body,
Mm-hmm. You mentioned what advice would you give young artists, and I would sort of compare your art to if you've ever been in a really long-term committed relationship, right? If you commit to a craft, right, it's in sickness and health till death do you part. And to know that there are gonna be times where you're not loving what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Get out through the tough times. Oh my God, the good times, you can only get good times if you stick it out through the hard times.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Is there someone that inspired you, that led you on your path?
Yeah, I think mentors and community, really important. It's always important to have your community. My mentors were teachers, right? And I just full of love whenever I think of them. But also my shout out to my community, Teatro Luna, which is a pan-Latinx theater company for people who identify as female, and they create beautiful devised work, and that's like my home in Los Angeles, my theater home. At first, my mom was a little bit like, this is going to be a hard life, and I don't want you to have a hard life. For school, I had to take out loans. It was all financed through loans. I am very much in debt. We've got a system now in the United States where it's just impossible to, I know my parents' generation, they could work for a couple years really hard and live really cheaply for a couple years, and that would pay for your college.
We have our dreams for our children as parents, but we need to listen to their dreams, and we need to support them to reach their potential and become who they are, who they want to be when they grow up. I think education is very, very important, and we should support them in any way we can to get the education that they want, they deserve, that they need. And for Hispanics, I'm thrilled that my classes are 60 to 70% Hispanics in a school where only about 6% of the students are Latinos. And so I know that they come to my classes, that they follow my classes, and I love that. I welcome that challenge. But if they don't want to go to school, sometimes they want to do something else. I think that we need to support them as well, to pursue their dreams. And as parents, I think sometimes we get caught up in this where we know better because we're older, and that's not true. We don't always know better. We need to listen to them. They know. It's like Kristen always knew. She's wanted to be an actor since she was little. And I kept on saying, okay, well, you need to, just in case you end up teaching, you need to get another degree. And she does. She got 2 degrees. She had a degree in English and a degree in theater. And it has served her well. She's an avid reader. But she's an actor. She will always be.
I decided not to go to college. I got my equity card straight out of, I had 2 years of conservatory, and then I just started working. To be honest, I'm dyslexic. I have learning disabilities, so regular education was a little bit difficult for me. So this is sort of the path I took to get my theater education. My family now is unbelievably supportive. I mean, they don't know how I do it, but they sure love watching me do it. They're gonna come. Everybody is coming from all over the country to come see this show. And I can't wait for my dad to see it because he's so sentimental and he loves the music so much that I'm gonna have to pick him up with a spoon afterwards.
Yeah, so my mom was really just concerned to make sure I understood the reality of the choice I was making. But then once I was a few years in, once she saw how hard I worked and how committed I was, that this wasn't something I was just gonna dabble in, then she became my #1 cheerleader. I couldn't do this without her.
To tell me that she had this audition and can I help her with the Spanish, because she has an accent, and my accent in English is a lot thicker. In Spanish, I don't have that much of an accent, or the accent is very Mexican. And so, when she started singing the song, she was hitting every note, and it seemed to me like I'd known that song. It's a very old song. It's a song that my parents listened to, my grandparents listened to, and of course with mariachi music, it just gets passed on. And I said, Kristen, that song was just made for you. I said, you are hitting every note. I said, you're gonna get this part. I feel really good about it. I said, so just don't worry about it. Just go back to it and just do what you're doing right now. And she said, no, Mom, but what am I doing? What else can you tell me? I said, you have me in tears. I said, yeah, I'm thinking about Nana, I'm thinking about Tata, I'm thinking about all these things. I just said, you're connected. And she told me a little bit about the background, and Alzheimer's runs in our family. And I've told her a few times, when I end up, don't do this or don't do that, or you have to make sure I dress like this. I've told her things that I want if my mind should ever go.
They're coming to see the show, and they are all huge mariachi fans, and I can't wait to share this with them, because not only for the music, but also just to understand like a first generation Mexican American woman's relationship to the music, and sharing those trials and that joy and vitality like with them.
I have very little music to do as compared to the other ladies. I sing and I play a little violin, but she has learned to play mariachi violin and absolutely, can I say kick ass? These girls are amazing. So our maestra's name is Cynthia Reifer Flores, and she is a premier mariachi violinist. She has taken a group of, most of us play maybe a little guitar, maybe a little this and that, sing, we're musical. But she's taken a group of people, an entire ensemble, and taught us mariachi. And she's not like easygoing or kind of, there are things that we really have to know, and downbeats we have to hit, and music that is sung the way that if you do musical theater is not something you're used to. And she has really like infused us not only with the knowledge, but also this great love, right? She takes us to bars to go see wonderful mariachis. We've been all over the place in Tucson just listening, absorbing the music, and it's been, apart from the super, super hard work, it has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to watch the girls develop as a real mariachi group, which I think if you come see the show, you'll be pretty impressed.
I am the musical director for the work, and I'm also arranged the music for the play itself. Well, the girls they actually had to learn to play instruments, so they had to be able to perform on them. The visual, of course, is going to be super important, because people are watching how you're holding the violin, how you're holding the instrument. Is your bow going the right way? Especially when they have backup. If somebody else is playing the same part, it's really important that they look like they're playing it. The parts that they had to play, we tried to get them so they were on time and they were making good sound, and that they had such a short time to do it. Tried to get them so they were playing the right fingerings for the chords, and the right, holding the instruments in the right way, in a respectful way to the instruments, so it looked like somebody who was a mariachi had actually taught them. And I think that's really important to this play. And they were pretty amazing. They had a very short time to learn that. When I left the Reinas, I had already gone back to school to get my master's degree, and I decided to get it in Latin American Studies, and I've been considered a Mexicanista, because even everything I was studying was because I really loved mariachi. And so I was studying the history of Mexico, and I was studying the culture of Mexico, and I was studying the writers of Mexico, and the art of Mexico, and the politics of Mexico, and making this into a Latin American Studies degree. I got very, very lucky at Cal State LA while I was taking their Music of Latin America class. The instructor knew I was a mariachi, and he said, would you like to teach the mariachi class? You probably know more. And I said, yeah. And so I got to teach 2 classes. So when they decided to hire a teacher for mariachi, they just got in touch with me and said, do you know somebody who is interested in teaching mariachi, or would you be interested in that role? I'm like, this is my dream job. When Laura Sabrina passed away, they were looking for a replacement, and they asked me to step in on an emergency basis at University of California, Riverside, which was her program. And I was a little reluctant, but I said yes, and then they decided to hire me, and I just felt this like this hand reaching down saying, here, take my baby and do something nice with it, I'm leaving this in your hands. So I really feel like I got, that Laura gave this gift to me, and that she gave me the responsibility of continuing her legacy there.
I grew up in a town called Watsonville, but specifically a little place called Freedom. And my grandmother, who was a farm worker there, knew the family, Laura Sapino Cano. I remember her telling me that she knew the family. And it wouldn't be until many, many years later that I would actually interview Laura in Los Angeles. I was interested in her journey and her story as a professional woman mariachi. The play that I've written, American Mariachi, is also dedicated to her, as well as Armida Valdez. And our musical director, Cindy Rayfer Flores, came to discover these connections. She had gone to school there in Santa Cruz, and so Santa Cruz County is where I grew up, and so there's just this connection. American Mariachi comes from many, many places for me. One, it comes from being a little boy, and my mother was a widow of four, with four little boys at the age of 29. And I remember on weekends we would have to clean the house, and she'd have Javier Solis or some mariachi playing on the record player. So that was my earliest, memories of the music. The other thing I wanted to do with this play was to honor the women that helped raise me, my grandmother, my mother, and my wife. Of course, my wife didn't raise me, but my wife was honoring them, but also as I, was a student, I am a student of mariachi, where I teach at California State University, Los Angeles. And about 10 years ago, I decided I needed to change things up, and so I went and audited a mariachi class there. And Cindy Rayfer Flores, my musical director for American Mariachi, was teaching that class, and I knew nothing about music, nothing. But as I began to break it down and come to understand the music, it actually went in a deeper chord for me in the sense that I came to realize that this is another language, another connection to family, to culture. And I've always felt that in my life as an artist, I've had to find culture through art. And so mariachi was a perfect entrance into another part of myself. I think in the long run, in studying with other teachers of mariachi, I studied with El Cura, and he was my voice teacher. And I think in the long run what he ended up helping me do, whether he knew it or not, is actually found my voice. Not my musical voice, not my singing voice, but my voice, just who I am as a middle-aged man. And I thought that was something else that eventually would find its way into American Mariachi. I think one of the last elements before this play ended up becoming a play with music was we were at school we just finished a school event having played mariachi music. And Stacy Lopez, who's an incredible vihuela player, one of the first women to major in music, a BA in music, but emphasis was vihuela. Right? She plays with La Escuela in Los Angeles, and also is an educator, teacher. And she told me one day that she was doing a gig, and they played one song for this little elderly lady for a full hour. And every time they play it, she just sort of came alive, came awake, and would sing that song. And I thought about that and thought about, you know, the challenges that most families have now with Alzheimer's and dementia. And felt that that was another element to American Mariachi. I think lastly, for me, for most Americans, you know, looking at that musical form, they only see sort of the outer shell of it. And I wanted to try to dig a little deeper and tell a story about a family that comes from this tradition. And what does it mean to a culture that is removed from their original country and their children are raised here? What do children hold on to besides language and food? Well, it's music. And I thought, I want to celebrate that. And I want to share, for those who don't really know anything about mariachi, why it's so important to community. And so that's how American Mariachi evolved. It was originally commissioned in 2015 by the Herberger Theater Center. And it would take us about 2 years to develop it, really trying to find a way to tell a story about mariachi, but also then trying to find a way of incorporating music, because music was important, live mariachi music. And so that would take a while to find, first of all, the artists that could act, sing, and then play music. And so we ultimately premiered the play in Denver in February of 2018, and it was a co-production with the Old Globe, and it moved from Denver to the Globe from March through April. Now we're here in Tucson at the Arizona Theater Company, and I'm really excited about this draft because I've been able to rewrite it significantly, and I think it's much deeper. And I think it's going to be exciting for the audience to see it here. We have a new cast. Cindy is the only person that's continued on with me on this journey. And we had our first preview last night, and we had about 600 audience members here. And it was exciting to see a mixed house of your traditional theater goers, subscribers, with a community that tends not to come to the theater because it's just not been part of their, you know, either their upbringing or access. Access is a big deal, and in this way, it was exciting because that audience doesn't see themselves as theater goers, and so there's a different energy that is brought into the house with an audience when you mix it up like that. And it just gets rambunctious, it gets exciting. People are throwing gritos, you know, people are singing along, you know, they're commenting through the performance, and that's an exciting element about this performance, this production, and particularly this play.
Music, acting, and the whole combination. There we have a lot of mariachis that study acting as well, because when they go on stage, they have to feel the music.
Yes, that's right.
What advice would you give young musicians that are in mariachis, but also tend to need to learn the art form of acting and presenting?
Yeah.
What advice?
You know, it's interesting because our mariachis are, you know, they're, as you've said, they're used to being on stage and being performers and to channel emotion and the life of the who they're singing or what they're singing about. And so it's very similar to the work of acting. I think in terms of their own training, I think there's nothing you can just do to be a better actor. You actually have to keep practicing and get skill and get trained to do it well. So for mariachis and musicians that want to expand their opportunity and go into acting or performance in that way, I think there's a lot. The foundation is there, and they just have to keep building those. I think what's really important is that, especially right now, what's happening in our country in terms of people, communities under siege, being assigned traits that they don't actually have. I think it's a play that forces you to open your heart and open your ways to thinking about a community that we all know and love and should be celebrated. And although there is something very special about these people, the themes, the ideas, the pain, the joys are all universal.
Which was a co-production with the Old Globe.
Oh, okay.
And we said, yes, we want to do it, but we wanted to do our own production. David Ivers, the artistic director, and I, when we were looking at putting together this season, we started by saying, what are the kind of voices that we want to hear telling the stories? And it wasn't really saying, oh, we want a Latino play and an African American play. We just wanted, what were the voices in the stories that we wanted to tell? And when Jose's script came across the desk and David read it, handed it to me, and that was one of the first ones in. It was like we knew that we really wanted to do that, and especially with the deep resonance of mariachi in Tucson, we knew we had to do that. Well, it's a gem. It's actually a jewel of a theater. It's an intimate house. It's got 620 seats, but it feels smaller than that, but a Broadway-sized stage. And then you have that whole architecture around, which is this warm and inviting environment that says that, you know, it's a celebration of life, that this theater, and the way it actually, if you walk into the place, it envelops you. Like when you walk in, the place envelops you, and you know, it's the same design and architecture as the Pasadena Playhouse. They were actually built off of the same plans. They're just mirror images of each other. I think one of the things that when I first read it, I thought, oh my God, this is the Bad News Bears of mariachi. That wonderful movie with Walter Matthau about this group of ragtag kids who like shouldn't and didn't know how to play baseball, but they just wanted to and they did. And I feel like that this is the celebration of that spirit. And I love that it's a group of women in the 70s. So like you said, before Linda Ronstadt sang mariachi, and they all say, yeah, sure, we'll do it, without any idea of what that means, but their will and their joy makes it happen. Or it is what they say in dementia, or the sense of people in post-traumatic shock or loss of memory. Music is one of the biggest things that can pull you back. And that's what, you know, talk about the universality of this play. It hits you on so many levels. At ATC, what we try to do is show all the different ways that stories can be told in the theater, so that we're not just doing musicals or plays, and sometimes those art forms intersect, and that's what this play does beautifully. Just thank you for helping us get the word out about this, because it's a play that I hope that everyone sees, because I know if you see it, it'll stay with you for a long time.